Storm's coming. She almost seems disappointed that they weren't grilled.
私はそんなことしないって。ほら、バトラも嘘だったって認めろよ。バトラ君、マリアちゃんは素直な子だから、そういう冗談でも真に受けちゃうんだよ。冗談も少し選んだ方がいいよ。
George Aniki gently scolded me. Even though I outstripped Aniki in height, Aniki was Aniki, of course. There was no choice but to obediently apologize.
ありがとう。マリア、今のは冗談だ。海猫たちは今日はすでおとなしく。
She better not drop you right here and now for lying to her. You're in trouble. Uh-oh. She's catching on. Had she actually been tricked, despite all the fun she was having? Her pure eyes made me feel guilty. Maybe I went a little overboard with her after all.
そうだそうだ。ジョージ兄貴が言ったのが本当だ。天気が悪いんで今日は引き上げたんだろうよ。いなくなったわけじゃないんだぜ。ね、おばさん。
そうよ。
Yeah, Orlisa's like, what are you telling my kid? Jeez.
明日以降、天気が良くなったら、きっと戻ってきて、ミャーミャーと声を聞かせてくれるわ。天気良くなって戻ってくるの待つ。
I mean, the weather looks pretty nice right now. Maria was in a lighter mood and was looking forward to tomorrow, when the seagulls would come back and fill the skies. Still, George Aniki was really amazing at taking care of kids. I think I remember Aniki taking good care of me as well when I was a brat 6 years ago. I mean, Battler isn't bad either, even if he was telling his jokes. Got Maria all worked up in a funny way. Aniki, that's probably your gift.
ジョージ君は小さい子の面倒を見るのがうまいわね。保育士さんでも務められるんじゃない？なあ、ジョージ兄さんの転職っぽいぜ。私的には社長室でビジネスってより、そっちの方が兄さんのイメージだぜ。
Ready to become a father?
まさか、保育士さんは立派なお仕事だよ。
本当にジョージ君は謙虚ね。でも、バトラ君も子供のあやしが上手よ。さっきはほんの少しの間だけど、マリアとっても楽しそうだった。これからも今みたいに遊んであげてね。冗談は選んで。
Battler and Maria about to be best fucking friends. Aunt Rosa winked at me, giggling a little. She's a real mother, I thought to myself, who's happy to see Maria having fun. Well, oh God, Rosa and the brats. The old bastard was waving for us to hurry up. Yeah, we needed to get moving. We might as well have had this conversation after setting our luggage down in our rooms. Gora Toshiro. Gora-san called everyone and led the way. Kumasawa-san brought up the rear. I feel like I'm walking through a mist game. Like a point and click. A serpentine, twisting path led to it through a dim forest. It ran a bit uphill. I'd guessed the path was made all twisty so the slope wouldn't seem too steep. But personally, I'd have been happier if they had the guts to make some stairs in a straight line. No doubt they made the paths twist on purpose to put on airs of distance and importance. It's taken the scenic route to the mansion. Before long, we saw garden steps. From here on, I do have some memories. Go up these, and at the top of the stone steps, we saw a beautiful guest house. Right, so this building was just the guest house, and the main building was a separate one, I think. Its facade was lovely, of course, but more importantly, we couldn't enter its doors without having our hearts stolen away by the splendor of the beautiful rose garden spreading before it. His best boy, Uncle Hideyoshi. After climbing the stone steps, the people greeted by this rose garden gave voice to their impressions one by one. Looks good. No need to be picky. Even so, it was a delightful rose garden. I remembered that even 6 years ago. Huge numbers of roses had greeted us every year. This rose garden was the first thing that greeted the people who came to Rokkenjima. Even our parents, who came every year, couldn't help but give voice to their admiration. In fact, it seemed to have undergone a power-up from the garden from my memory 6 years ago. What? Sure, he doesn't particularly care about being called a rose. Oh my god. This battler's dad, a carnivorous man. The thing of the past. Oh, but I bet Kairi keeps him in place. She seems like the kind of person that might be capable of cracking the whip and keeping him down. She seems capable enough. Live dangerously. You made my rose wilt.
ほら、マリアちゃん、来てごらん。こっちのバラは特に立派だよ。
バラが立
派。かぐわしい匂いだぜ。俺のエレガントさにぴったりだな。
It does seem like a neat place to visit.
マリアが真似してトゲで怪我するだろ。
She yelled at me as I leaned in to smell the rose's scent with an exaggerated gesture. I thought she was overreacting, but when I turned around I saw Maria imitating my every gesture and George Aniki smiling broadly at us. Yeah, I think Maria's really very quickly taken a liking to Battler. It's pretty cute to see.
気をつけて。バラのトゲは痛いよ。
このバラだけ変。
strange.
変？どうしたんだよ。
Maria pointed at a single rose. I immediately understood why she found it odd. In the midst of all these magnificent roses, one single rose was just starting to wilt. There wasn't any particular reason. Some roses flourish, and others wilt. That's all there was to it, but Maria seemed very concerned about the one unhealthy one in the group. It must have made her feel lonely.
このバラだけ元気がなくてかわいそう。
他はみんな元気なのにこれだけかわいそう。まあ咲いたり枯れたりはそれぞれだからな。一足先にしおれる代わりにそのバラは他のどのバラよりも早く開花できたんだと思うぜ。
Is this alluding to anything?
そうだよな。
That the reader doesn't know yet?
いっぱい咲いて
I'm
その
curious.
役目を終えてお休みに入ったってだけのことだと思うぜ。そんなに気に病むことはねえさ。
It seemed that Maria's pure, sensitive nature was making her feel some emotional pain for the rose that wilted alone. Even though she understood the logic of it, it still felt lonely to her.
じゃあマリアちゃん、帰るまでの間このバラをお世話してあげるといいよ。
Don't say that. What if it's dead by the time you guys leave? George Anarchy straightened up and felt around in his pocket. He then took out the wrapper from a candy he had been sucking on the plane. He twisted it into a thin string, then gently tied it to the rose as sort of a marker. Twisted into a thing. Okay, so just old gum, I guess.
へえ、なんだか可愛くなったね。
これがこのバラの目印だよ。後でお水とかをあげに来てごらん。バラさんもきっと喜ぶと思うよ。
お水とかあげに来る。
Oh.
せっかくだからこのバラさんに何か。そうするとバラさんも喜ぶと思うし、マリアちゃんと心もきっと通い合うと思うよ。
名前
Come up with a name on the spot. Though she still wore her usual sullen face, Maria crossed her arms and began to consider this intently. At the very least, she appeared to have been completely pulled out of her slump. Nice going, Aniki.
ジョージ兄さんって昔っから包容力があるよな。尊敬するぜ。
だな、人徳ってやつだろ。後で爪の赤をもらってきてやるから一緒に飲もうぜ。
In a sec, let me just double check. Okay. Picking up tips.
この庭園はお前が子供の頃にもこんなに立派だったんか？
I guess.
私が出てってからよ、こんなに立
Oh,
派
he
に
was
なったの
asking.
は。
Okay. He wasn't asking the teenagers if it was nice when they were kids, because that would imply that he hasn't. Uncle Hideyoshi has not been around that long. But he was asking the adults. I see.
前の庭園の方が素朴で愛着があったんだけどね。
Or hasn't, like, I meant, like, hasn't been coming to these family meetings for that long, but.
兄さんがちょっと悪趣味にいじりすぎたのよ。前の方がずっと良かったんだから。
エヴァ、ポジティブシンキングやで。その方が心が安らかになるで。
別にそんな意味じゃん。ただ私は昔の方が素敵だった庭園をあなたにも見てほしかったなってだけよ。
それでは皆様よろしいです。そろそろお部屋の方にご案内いたします。
He just stood by while everyone admired the gardens. Goda-san called to everyone to ask if we were ready. But our hearts had been completely stolen away by the rose garden that none of us had seen for a year, so we didn't pay much attention to him. Since we weren't a travel group, it wasn't like we had a strict schedule to follow. Besides, since our parents were visiting their old home, full of nostalgia. It wasn't like they had to let themselves be urged on by anyone or anything. Understanding the situation, Goda-san continued to wait, smiling widely, while our parents got tired of the roses and told him to guide us to our rooms.
Well? Oi! Kanon kun ya nai ka!
Kanon!
Hisashiburi ya na! Genki ka?
Uncle Hideyoshi suddenly shouted. I do remember this boy. In the direction he was waving was a slender boy. I don't remember much other than he was pretty quiet and not very friendly, I guess. Meeting him right after a huge man like Goda probably emphasized his small stature. The boy was in the middle of transporting piled up gardening tools and the like in the wheelbarrow. When he realized he was being called to stop, he set down the wheelbarrow and took his hat off and bowed his head. I figured he was probably younger than me, and I realized by the general atmosphere surrounding him that he was another servant. He greeted us in response to Uncle Hideyoshi's call, but he seemed like he might be pretty unsociable most of the time. It was a greeting that lacked feeling. When Goda-san noticed that our interest had shifted towards him, he went to the boy's side and introduced him to us.
Batora-sama, ご紹介いたします。Ushiromiya本家にお仕えしております使用人の一人です。
To someone that wasn't here 6 years ago, for sure. But then again, he looks very young.
お客様にご挨拶を。
はじめまして。使用人のカノンです。
Seems like he's just putting on airs like... Yep, my first impression wasn't wrong. He seemed to be unsociable, or at least not so good at talking, compared to Goda-san, who was extraordinarily polished as a servant. You couldn't help but feel an inexperience typical of his age. When Goda-san urged him in a whisper to give a bit more of an introduction, the boy, named Kanon, only cast his eyes downward.
カノンさん、もう少し何か挨拶することはできませんか？
いえ、僕たちは家具ですから。
Wow. I don't remember that line, but that is interesting. Is that the result of Grandpa's strictness, like how he teaches his servants, or I don't know. He didn't seem to be refusing to greet us out of spite. Rather, he seemed to have fallen silent because he didn't know what else to say to us in greeting. But this is just a job, right? I mean, I don't know. Why would you let a mere job convince you that you're like less than human? I just don't know the circumstances, I suppose.
寡黙でさ、余計なおしゃべりはしない性分なんだよ。愛想は少し悪いけど、根はいい人なんだぜ。誤解しないで。
Yeah, I don't think he's bad, I guess. It's just
ここに勤めて3年になるんだ。
there's some reason why he's acting a way that I don't know yet. 3 years.
確かゴーダさんより1年長いんだよな、カノン君。
Wait, she just said he started a year before Goda-san, so he's been around longer than Goda. Interesting. Even though he wasn't exactly giving a terrible first impression, Jessica hurriedly backed him up. I see. Apparently, his unsociable nature causes him a lot of trouble.
そっか。よろしくな。俺はバトラ。18だけど、君はいくつだい？
Jeez. that scorn. He's just like, ugh, why are you talking to me? He fell silent as though wondering whether or not it was a question he'd have to answer. But here again, Jessica bowed ahead.
確か私たちの2つ下だから16だったよな。
はい、そうです。
It looked like he would have preferred not to tell us his age if given the choice. That was probably because he thought we'd look down on him for it. I remember that when I was around his age, I hated being asked how old I was by adults. I see. 16, huh? It's got to be a delicate time. Which means I probably asked something I shouldn't have. Yeah, talk to him like he's one of you guys instead of someone younger.
ありがとうございます。お気持ちだけで結構です、バトラ様。
Jessica looked panicky for some reason. She seemed to think my impression of Canon was getting worse because of his refusal. Well, as a girl, Jessica probably couldn't understand the fretful male heart at his age. As his elder, even by just 2 years, I took it upon myself to be understanding of that.
カノンさん、もう少し愛想よくはできませんか。笑顔も使用人の義務ですよ。
申し訳ありません。努力します。
ゴーラさん、カノン君もいろいろ頑張ってるんですよ。ねえ。
It looked like he was often warned about being unsociable, and apparently he hadn't improved one bit. Goda-san kept his business smile, but let a small sigh of resignation escape.
それではまだ仕事がありますので、失礼します。
It looked like Canon himself was uncomfortable with remaining silent here any longer. After another perfunctory bow, he turned around and started pushing the wheelbarrow again. Just then, the wheelbarrow suddenly wobbled and fell, scattering the load. I guess the wheelbarrow's single wheel got caught on a pebble and lost its balance.
何をしてるんですか。ささ、早く片付けて。
Not in front of the guests. Jeez, Canon. Goda-san urged him to hurry in a quiet voice, as though hinting that it was shameful for a servant to appear clumsy in front of guests. Canon-kun wordlessly reloaded the wheelbarrow with the fallen objects, as if to say that he understood quite well without being told. He seemed to be fine with the light-looking gardening tools, shovels and such, but he looked like he was having trouble getting his arms around to lifting some sacks of fertilizer.
大丈夫かよ。そそっかしいな。ほら。
お嬢様、お召し物が汚れます。ここはお任せください。
With a smooth motion, Goda-san took the shovel that Jessica had picked up. Behind him, Canon-kun was having trouble with the sacks of fertilizer. She's just like, huh.
安心しろよ。俺が着てるのはそんなお上品なものじゃねえぜ。それによ。俺はレストランで落ちたフォークをウェイトレスに拾わせるってやつが大嫌いなんだ。
I lifted up the other bags that had fallen. Of course, they weren't light, but for me, it was a piece of cake. Canon-kun looked at me surprised. It was the face of someone who had never expected to receive help from a guest.
バトラ様、結構です。僕が
Bothering him. Or at least, just doesn't seem right to him, as far as he was taught.
こう見えても鍛え方が違うぜ。
Since Canon-kun looked like he hadn't yet gone through his growth spurt, he was struck with a sort of weak body. This kind of weight might have been too much for him.
結構重いね。カノン君が苦労するのも無理はないよ。カノン君、気にしないで。
これぞ俺の見せ場さ。これでさっきの船の分はチャラだよな。
You gotta make up for that? Yeah, they're not gonna let you live that down. Oh my god, even Maria is just latched onto things. Poor Battler. Oh, jeez. As they did this, I piled all the stuff back into the wheelbarrow.
お見苦しいところをお見せして申し訳ございませんでした。
ささも結構ですよ。言ってください。
Letting the guests who were supposed to feel welcome see such a disgraceful thing must have been hideously embarrassing for a servant. Pressed by Goda to hurry up and go, Kanan-kun left.
ゴーダさんもいじめすぎよ。意地悪言わないで、あなたも手伝えばよかったんじゃない？
これは至りませんで、誠に申し訳ございませんでした。
I don't remember what was going on, but as far as I got, which is not that much further than this, I remember Goda was not nice during the one dinner scene I saw, where Grandpa wouldn't show up. Or at least immediately afterwards. So I have kind of a negative opinion of Goda. As far as I remember. Without even a twitch in his smile, Goda-san apologized elegantly. Like, I don't remember what he did, but I just remember negative things about him, I guess. I just remember there was something that wasn't great about him.
カノン君もええところはぎょうさんあるんやで。ただ若いんかの。いろいろと損をしとる。もったいないわ。
気難しい年頃さ。そっとしといてやれよ。使用人は寡黙なくらいがちょうどいいさ。
Closed mouth servants.
熊沢さん。
I mean, if that's what they're paid to be, then they're being paid pretty good. I don't know how the servants are here. Saying they're just furniture is pretty weird. But if you pay your servants to be silent servants and they're getting paid adequately, it's not a bad thing. I don't believe that for a second, Chio. Everyone smiled wryly at that obvious lie. Even she herself didn't believe that, not in her wildest dreams. So she must have said it to lighten the mood. Yeah, that's the kind of character Kumasawa, Ba-chan, used to be. The once stiff atmosphere had cleared up at once thanks to her cheerful smile.
そろそろ荷物を置きたいわね。ゴダさん、部屋割りはどうなってるのかしら。
昨年と同じになっております。さあ、ご案内いたします。どうぞこちらへ。
We headed towards a trim, elegantly simple guest house. I mean, that looks much bigger than most regular houses, and yet it is the guest house. Because these people, oh my god. This is going to be our temporary quarters for the night. That's a lot of dots. Cannon watched over a hedge as the guests all entered the guest house. Then he let his eyes fall on those heavy sacks of fertilizer piled up in the wheelbarrow. In his mind, he kept going over his previous mistake. Battler, big and strong, had picked up the sacks in front of him, the sacks Cannon couldn't lift himself, as if they were feathers. It would be extremely difficult for an outside observer to guess what emotions that favor had stirred up in Cannon. Interesting. Difficult for an outsider to guess what I mean, he seems pretty... His emotions seem clear to me. Like, not everything he's thinking, but his quiet shyness and stuff says something. but as far as you could tell by watching him hang his head, there was something that he just couldn't let go of. I don't understand the furniture thing, and I'm not really sure what's going on here as far as that goes. Muttered words escaped his lips, but those words he murmured were so soft that it didn't reach even his own ears.
僕だって
I don't remember this at all. Even I. Cannon hung his head, slightly biting his lower lip. Oh, is that all we get? Okay. Just left completely unknown. Okay.
バラの庭園は記憶にあったんだけどよ。このゲストハウスっつうのは記憶にねえな。これ建てたのは最近か？
Torayan. Torayan, or visitor's retreat, was written on a gatepost-like thing. But since everyone called it the guest house, I followed their lead. The brand new Western-style guest house, which stood overlooking the roses, had magnificent design carefully done in harmony with the garden.
正解だよ。建ったのはつい一昨年さ。それ以降は僕たちはこっちに泊めさせてもらってるんだよ。
年季の入ったボロ屋敷より
She prefers it even.
好評みてえだしな。私も自分の部屋をこっちに持ちたいぜ。マリアも持ちたい。
Wait, so do Jessica and her parents... I'm sorry if this was already said. Does Jessica and her parents live in the mansion with Grandpa, then? I assume? Yes, they do. I remember that. I'm sorry. Yes, they do. I guess you could say my own house was upper class, but to me it felt completely ordinary compared to the head family. The display of wealth was shocking, as was the fact that they'd build this kind of awesome guest house for guests who came only a few times a year.
エヴァ様、秀吉様、こちらのお部屋をお使いくださいませ。
He almost said Hideyoshi, not Hideyoshi. Is that I kind of silent then? Hideyoshi-tama? Kind of like a death situation. I'll have to listen out for that. Kire. Not, oh, Kitty. Sama.
やっぱりここは綺麗で上品でいいわね。洋風って本当に素敵だわ。
ほんの2、3日なら洋風もええやろが、ずっといて落ち着くのは断固和風。
He's got a preference.
日本人は畳の上が一番くつろげる。
I mean, with my bad back, I could not imagine sleeping on a tatami mat, to be honest. It sounds just awful for my
新しい
back.
家を和風にするか洋風にするかで喧嘩してね。お父さんが和風で着工させたのを母さんまだ根に持ってよく言い合いをするんだよ。
ジョージ兄さんのところは両親仲が良くて羨ましいぜ。うちなんか冷め切ったもんさ。
Okay, so Hideyoshi and Aunt Eva, at least to outward appearances, seem to get along, as opposed to... I mean, Jessica's parents we haven't seen yet in this playthrough. I don't remember their names. But apparently are not so close.
そのくせ私の成績の話だけは連帯しやがる。
All the rooms seemed to be for 2 people. I was grateful since I wasn't going to be forced to share the same room with the old bastard, under the pretext that we were family. I love it was just always the old bastard. And anyway, I figured those two wouldn't be able to enjoy themselves with someone like me around. Ehehehehe, as Battler would do. Yeah. I gotcha. Oh god, he's smiling too. The ehehe in his head just immediately makes a smile. Yeah. He was. God damn it. Please try not to be so obvious, Battler. Oh god. Once again, Dad pulled my ears from behind. The guest of honor. Is it because it's been so long? Oh. Don't make a fool of yourself in front of Grandpa. The head. It's weird for a guy's son to call his father the head. Well, that's what we've seen so far. Yeah. That's usual, or maybe just usual as of late. No one but head butler. He'll only see Genji. That's weird. And just has Genji pour him his green drinks over and over again. Black magic. Stinking up it in a literal sense or a... Yeah, I was about to say, someone's gonna get mad at her for saying that, right? It's the big twist of this game that Grandpa is just senile. He's just a senile drunk. Like, I know there's gonna be crazy shit in this game, but it'd be funny if, like, at the end, everything was Grandpa's senile delusions. Oh my god. After being rebuked by a George Anarchy, Jessica had no choice but to take back her thoughtless remark. The Ushiromiya family was wealthy beyond belief, but of course that meant all its members were a bit strange, and completely out of touch with the world at large. I mean, I want to see that more. I want to see everyone's little quirks more. It's interesting. I do like the characters, and I'm excited to see them be expanded on. You know, we get this air of everyone's just a nice happy family at first, with a little weird things about them, but I'm just curious what's under the surface, I guess. And at the top of the chain, the family head, our grandfather, seemed especially strange and terrifying, even for our family. Dad said he was getting a stomach ache earlier, and I imagine that reflected the honest feelings of all the adults here today. No doubt they were jealous of us grandchildren, who could just play around and laugh without a care. From the stories Dad told me, the family head was a violent man who ruled with his fists, beating his children, even his daughters, mercilessly with a wooden sword. Okay, I did not remember that either. And I can't say I'm on board with that method. Beating all of your children with a wooden sword sounds a little extreme. And also really extreme. Wow. Yeah. Did not remember that. If he was so strict and uptight about that, why couldn't he have been a little more conservative with his kids' names? Really? That's what you're getting from this? Like, oh, well, if he beat them with swords, at least he could have given them normal names. That's where we're going with this. Because of that, even us grandkids have had to suffer. At least you avoided the wooden sword beatings. Anyway, I can't say I have any trouble believing those terrible stories about him. I don't remember meeting him very often, but I think I recall him looking extremely grumpy all the time, always making people cower with that sharp gaze of his. I remember that the room's atmosphere got so intense, got so tense whenever he was around, you couldn't even breathe. What my dad said about me being the guest of honor now carries a little more oomph for me.
6年前は俺も小学生だったが、さすがに今は高校生だ。
Right.
失礼のある態度なんか取ったら、怖い。
確かにこわもてだけど、そんなに硬くなるほど怖い人じゃないよ。
Okay.
決して理不尽なことは言ってないもん。口下手なだけで、ちゃんと筋は通す人だよ。
So George thinks he's a reasonable man. Has he heard the stories about his grandpa? Maybe they all just think it's not necessarily out of the ordinary. Family darling. Yeah, he's the favorite of the grandchildren, which I guess gives him a different idea about it all. Doesn't really get it. Oh, you have? Oh my god. Not even the grandchildren are safe from the sword. Maria, please hide. Oh my god. Maidenly innocent ass. Oh my god. Oh, and George's like, well, yeah, of course. You're the heiress. You gotta get your act together. You're just getting special treatment, so deal with the wooden sword on your ass. It's the wooden sword of love. It represents his love for you each time he smacks you. She's just like, I don't want it. I think I already said it before, but Jessica's the girl heir to the head family. We're only cousins in branch families, so she probably feels a totally different sort of pressure than we do. So George kind of misunderstands on both ways. Like, he's the favorite of the family for his accomplishments, and he's also not the head, so the expectations are lower as well. Like, it's a double thing that's got him and thinking about it differently than Jessica would. Oh. Maria seems really sweet. Like, I don't want her to, like, at one point just go, like, standard anime, like, wide eyes and be like, oh, I've been evil all along or something. Like, she seems really sweet, and I wouldn't really understand if she had, like, had some weird other side to her. Or at least not without some decent explanation. And I don't know why, I keep saying this, but it just keeps going back to like the blood I saw on her face in the OP. But she just seems like a really decent child. I don't know. She's got really weird quirks, but does not seem like the kind of person that would have some like weird other side to her. Obviously this is me talking with no knowledge of anything that comes after, you know, what I've read to, which is not far off. So I might just sound like an idiot with whatever I'm saying right now, but yeah. I just have this, after saying Aunt Ava with her other side, I don't know. Can't trust anything. Jeez. She's down for it. 1 second ago, she was like, George, you could take it. And now she's like, I'm bearing this to my grave. She was grateful for Maria's innocent concern, but Jessica's face still seemed to contain some of the uneasiness she felt towards the future. Maybe we were in the same boat. Any high schooler with exams approaching would have trouble hiding their anxiety for the future.
Maria, いらっしゃい。お母さんとマリアはこの部屋よ。
バトラ君は僕と一緒にこっちの部屋だってさ。
Oh.
おお、なになに、こりゃ驚いた。
It's quite a spacious room.
親たちの部屋より広めじゃないのよ。
Wow! They said dang, but he said wow. Couldn't they have just translated that to wow? Oh, is this the boys' room, but the girls will come and hang out in it? Ooh. Don't tell poor Aunt Rosa that.
そうか、マリアもこっちがいいか。よし、ここは俺とジョージ兄貴の部屋だが、特別に出入りを許可してやろう。
Special permission.
内緒だぞ。
Aunt Rosa was right behind us, but Maria still answered, striking the air with fists clenched tight. After setting down their luggage in their rooms, our parents had gathered again in the corridor.
Oi, ガキども。お前らはどうする？ここでいとこ同士おしゃべりでもしてるか？
It seemed they were heading to the mansion to announce their arrival. Normally, they would make us follow them and greet everyone together. But if that had been the case, Dad would have just told us to come, and that'd be the end of it. He's saying it's okay if we don't come. So what'll we do?
どうせもうすぐお昼や。子供はそこでくつろいでたらええ。それに表で遊べるのは下手をすると今のうちだけかもしれんしの。
Maria's ready.
マリアはここでお留守番してなさい。いたずらをしないでおとなしく待ってるのよ。
Stay with the cousins. She's not happy. Since Maria was being told to house sit here, we certainly couldn't leave her on her own. George Aniki noticed this immediately and gave her a clear reply for all us cousins.
じゃあ、僕たちはお言葉に甘えて、1年ぶりに
After that trip, I'm sure Battler wants to chill and rest a little bit. He was not happy for most of that trip. That is true. He's got a lot to catch up on. Not just 6 years of stories to tell, but 6 years of stories to hear from everyone else.
熊沢さん、私もこっちに残るからよ。
あとは大人に任せて若者は退散してるぜ。
それがおよろしいでしょう。奥様にはそのようにお伝えいたします。
それでは皆様、お屋敷の方へご案内させていただきます。どうぞこちらへ。
他の子はともかく、ジョージは成人してるんだから連れて行った方がいいんじゃない？
そんなんでジョージだけ仲間外れはかわいそうやで。
So, is Jessica the heir to the family even though she's younger than George simply because her parents are the oldest? Is that how it normally works? That just seems a bit strange. Like, normally wouldn't it just be the oldest? No, I guess not. Because Jessica's parents would be the heirs, and then the heir's child. Okay. Yeah, never mind. Never mind. That's how it would work, I'm pretty sure.
いとこ同士の交流も大事や。ほら、行ってくるで。
The adults are gone. The adults left one after the other. They left in the same formation as our trip from the harbor, with Goda-san leading and Kumasawa-san taking up the rear. As we gathered in the room assigned to us cousins, George Aniki asked us to excuse him for a second. He rushed over to Kumasawa-san, who was following him behind the disappearing adults, and seemed to ask her something. He soon finished his business and came back.
どうしたんだよ、兄貴。
ああ、なんでもないよ。ちょっと聞きたいことがあっただけさ。
Is he asking about, Shannon? I think? Maybe?
何かな。ジョージ兄さんが私に聞かなくて熊沢さんには聞くことって全然
I can't tell if she's being sarcastic or not. Like, she's like, oh, I have no idea.
ジェシカちゃんが何を誤解してるのか知らないけど。
Aniki was getting pretty tongue-tied. It was almost as though he felt guilty about something, and Jessica knew exactly what he was worried about. At any rate, it's no fun if Jessica gets to know about it and not me.
なあ、マリア。俺たちだけのけ者なんてねえよな。
You're still bonding with Maria in this way, and I like it.
何の話か聞きてえよな。
You and Maria are going to be ultimate partners.
バトラとマリアも聞きたい。バトラとマリアも聞きたい。
I'm not gonna voice the ooze. All four of them. I fooled around a while oohing together with Maria. How come I don't get to hear Battler oohing? Wait, he just said he was oohing. Was it just figuratively? I want to hear the oohing from Battler.
さつけ。兄貴にしちゃ嘘が下手だぜ。拍手しやがれ。マリア、お前は右脇をくすぐれ。俺は左脇だ。
An assault on two sides. Get a whole CG of the bed for this.
二人ともやめて。やめ。
Maria and I played around, chasing George Aniki as he tried to escape rolling on the bed. I realize high schoolers aren't supposed to bounce around like kittens, but I still miss this kind of fun. A warm, cozy kind of fun.
ジョージ兄さんが熊沢さんに聞いたのはね。
Oh god. Battler and Maria will be the torturers while Jessica's the interrogator. It's the ultimate plan.
さんも本家は1年ぶりだからよ。
Yeah, I'm pretty
そ
sure.
の間に辞めた使用人とか入った使用人とか、そういうのがいたら
I just remember
挨拶
something
してい
between
い
him
って
and
そういう
Shannon,
ことらしい
the
ぜ。
maid.
おお、挨拶する。マリアも挨拶する。
なんだよそれ。全然やましくねえじゃねえかよ兄貴。違うなマリア、騙されるな。兄貴は何か隠
Goes
し
a
てる。
bit deeper than this. Oh no, not. God damn.
やめてよ本当に。マリアちゃんももうやめて。
They do seem friendly enough to be family. Like, I do appreciate that. They're not so embarrassed around each other. They seem very familiar with each other. It's not a stretch to believe that they've known each other for a long time. I appreciate that. We're not just told they're family, we're seeing that they're family. Shannon. Oh, she's been here over 6 years, huh? She must have been really young when she started as a servant. She's been here for 6 years. Like, really young.
So yeah, Natsuki 姉さん、最近頭痛の方はどうなんや。一時だいぶしんどそうにしとったろ。
おかげで最近はだいぶ調子がいいです。
First time we see Jessica's mom.
心配をしてくれてありがとう。
そうだ、これ夏日姉さんにお土産。
いつもありがとう。あなたには何かをもらってばかりね。これは
She's got the constant headaches, if I believe.
ペパーミントとレモンバームのハーブティー。頭痛によく効くって有名なお店のブレンドなの。姉さん
Yeah,
に
just a
効
big
くかなって思
migraine
って。
problem. Rosa was always a conscientious woman. Probably because she was the youngest of 4 and much younger than the other 3. She managed to grow up without gaining the venomous nature of her siblings. That makes me feel more hopeful for Maria if she had a mom like that. And that makes me feel good about Rosa. Like, I don't want to see Aunt Rosa or Maria have some like weird insidious side to them or anything. Her kind words got Natsuhi to soften, and her expression for just a moment, but it wasn't enough to melt her stony gaze, hardened as it was by long years of mental stress.
そういえばあなた、いっつも頭痛だって言ってたわね。しっかりなさいな。
Okay. Again, I left off on this when Aunt Ava just completely destroyed Aunt Natsuki, like. So, this feels like the very first sentence that, like, gives, like, a hinting of that. Ava does not really pity her for any of that.
ジェシカちゃん、今年は受験でしょ？人生の節目じゃない。母親のあなたがそんなじゃ頼りないわよ。それに夏日姉さん、私より3つも若いんだから、もうちょっとしっかりなさい。ごめんなさい。生まれつきの頭痛持ちなもので。
Even under normal circumstances, Ava sometimes failed to choose her words carefully, but her comments aimed at Natsuhi contained shards of obvious malice though she hid it with a smile. Of course, that fact didn't escape Natsuhi. She frantically contained her urge to grimace and pretend to ignore Eva. Is she, kind of upset that Natsuhi almost is second in charge at the family household here, just because she's married to the oldest sibling? Maybe feels that Natsuhi's kind of taken away from her role a bit, or what she thinks she should be doing. I don't know.
ルドルフさんも少しは関心を持ったら、自分の息子のために夏日姉さんみたいに頭痛になるくらい真剣になりなさいよ。
俺が何か言えば必ず反抗するやつだぜ。じゃあなんて言うんだ。むしろ逆で遊んでていいぞっていうのか。秀吉兄さんのところは受験本当にうまくいったじゃないですか。ぜひ子供操縦術の秘訣を教えてくださいよ。
そう。何のために勉強するのかっちゅうことを説いたかもしれんな。個々の勉強に意味があるわけやないんや。そう、勉強っちゅうのはわからんことを自分で調べて身につけるという行為の練習なんや。これができんやつは社会に出ても使い物にならん。国語算数ができろと言ってるんやない。勉強し身につけることを学べっちゅうことやな。
Learn how to learn.
ご立派ですわ。うちのジェシカにもそれが理解できればいいんだけど、今のままではとてもじゃないけど、後ろ宮家の跡取りとしては。いいじゃないの。無理に跡取りにしなくても。女には女の幸せというものもあるんだし。それを親が押し付けちゃ悪いわよ。
Aunt Eva just wants to go against everything Natsuhi says.
予算買えば子供の育て方は家それぞれや。押し付けがましいのはあかんで。
ごめんなさい。夏日姉さんも気を悪くしないでね。
Yeah, you keep putting on that smiling face. Though the light shining in through the windows was quite warm despite the cloudy weather, there was a dark mood about the room, which was probably causing headaches for more than just Natsuhi. As if to sweep away that mood, Kairi brightly made a suggestion to all present.
本当に素敵な香りの紅茶ね。早速いただいてみましょうよ。レオポルドの紅茶なんて日本じゃ確か銀座でしか買えなかったはずよ。
キリエ姉さんはお詳しいですね。買ってきた甲斐がありました。
Kitty and Rosa stood up from their seats and made as if to prepare the black tea. But Natsuhi forestalled them.
お二人ともありがとう。それは後でいただきましょう。
二人とも後にしろよ。ウェルカムドリンクくらいごちそうになろうぜ。
Rudolph gave a subtle signal with his eyes for them to sit down again. Kairi and Rosa understood instantly and obediently returned to their seats. The initial greeting of the guests was complete, so it was time for them to be served some tea. It was embarrassing for the host that the tea was late, especially now that the guests were talking about making tea themselves. Natsuhi bit her lower lip, frustrated by the ineptitude of the servants who were late bringing in the tea. Seeing her face, Eva immediately started to giggle. Of course, Shannon had no way of knowing what was taking place in the parlor. Man, Eva is just laughing like she's getting entertainment out of Natsuhi's like struggles and displeasures and stuff. Like there's just an instant malice that Eva has towards Natsuhi as soon as you see them in the same scene together. She came pushing a servant cart piled with teacups. For no apparent reason, Natsuhi gave her a pained look, and Shannon couldn't help but flinch without knowing what she had done wrong. Here she is.
お茶のご用意をさせていただきます。
おう、シャノンちゃん、久しぶりやの。
シャノンちゃん。
ますますべっぴんさんになりよったな。
いえ、どうも。
おしゃべりは配膳を済ませてからになさい。お茶が冷めます。
申し訳ございません、奥様。
She apologized like a small frightened animal, bumped against the serving cart, and made a jarring racket as she dropped several teaspoons. Her clumsiness made Natsuhi's expression turn even darker, which made Shannon quail even more. Just go against everything Natsuhi does, right? Yeah. God damn. So much just underhanded aggression, passive aggression, in everything she's saying.
冷めてはおりませんので。
シャノン、早く配膳を済ませなさい。
失礼しました、奥様。
It's quite the face, Natsuhi. Natsuhi's irritation was obvious by now. The ineptitude that delayed the tea, the clumsiness of the servant, everything pointed to the incompetence of Natsuhi's everyday leadership, making her lose face. As the person in charge of the Ushiromiya head family's kitchen, allowing that clumsiness to be exposed, today of all days, was surely nothing less than total humiliation.
シャノンちゃんだって頑張ってるのにいじめちゃかわいそうだぜ。
いじめてなんかいません。
いい香りね。お茶の銘柄を聞いてもいいかしら。
Oh, she doesn't know, right? Yeah.
申し訳ございません。後ほど調べてまいります。
Kari was trying to be nice, hoping to cut through the tense mood. However, Shannon had embarrassed herself instead, darkening Natsuhi's face and the room's mood. By this point, Ava was audibly giggling. God damn. This is so awkward. And she's just poking and prodding and trying to worsen the situation. Ugh.
すみません。すぐに用意を。ね
え、シャノンちゃん。銀のスプーンって何に使うか知ってる？銀じゃないとダメなのよ。なぜかわかる？
いえ、
A teasing smile rose to Ava's face as she stared at Shannon setting the table. By itself, Ava's expression was sweet in an impish sort of way. However, the words being spun from her lips held the keenness of a razor within them. Shannon tried with all her might to avoid Ava's continuing gaze. Realizing that Shannon was hard-pressed for an answer, Rosa gave some timely help.
銀は毒に触れると曇るって言われてるの。シャノンちゃんも一つお勉強ができたわね。
Yeah. They were acting as though this tea needed to be tested for poison before it could be drunk. In Natsuhi's eyes, this was an insult both to the tea and to herself for serving it. Rudolph laughed flippantly and patted Ava's shoulder.
姉貴に銀食器なんていらねえだろ。毒舌の姉貴が人なめしたら、銀の皿だって真っ黒に曇っちゃう。
わしはその毒舌を毎日聞かされとるから、もう毒に耐性がついてしもたわ。
My God. Yeah, send a little bit back to Ava.
相手には構わんが、耐性のない相手にはちと加減せんとな。
あらあら、ひどい。シャノンちゃんにお茶の知識を教えてあげただけじゃない。
Everyone followed the lead set by Hideyoshi's horse laugh and chuckled, though not easily. Only Natsuhi didn't join in, but for the time being the conversation inside the parlor could now be taken for a lively and friendly chat. As Shannon finally finished setting the tea table and tried to leave, Karia apologized to her in a low voice for not being able to help. Shannon gave a light bow and made a hasty retreat. Shannon cast her eyes downward as she pushed the cart down the corridor. Anyone seeing the pitiful way she looked might easily conclude that she had been bullied in some way. Oh, hello, Ken. Were you listening in?
見てたのね。そういうお役目だから。奥様もエヴァ様も地獄へ落ちろ。でも、それより卑劣なのはあいつだ。
It's quite the thing for a servant to say about their master. Go to hell, just behind their backs. He's definitely got some opinions about them. Cannon glared hatefully in the opposite direction of the parlor. Oh. The preparations for the tea had been delayed by some trifling problems in the kitchen. These problems were not Shannon's fault. In fact, it had been Goda's mistake. That's right. That's what I remember. Was Goda shifting the blame onto Shannon? Well, I had forgotten until now, but after all, there was no way a show-off like Goda would give up a flashy job like bringing in tea when the guests had arrived. He had ended up wasting time preparing the tea once again. So when he realized he wouldn't be able to score any points for this job, he pushed the task of setting the table on Shannon, who happened to be passing by. You might call it a clever move on his part, but there could be no doubt that it was a cowardly one. Yeah, I mean, you're saving face in front of your employer. It's smart in a way, but selfish. Cannon's silence vividly expressed the distance between Shannon's words and how she actually felt.
ありがとう。カノン君だけでも分かってくれたんで、ちょっと心が楽になったかな。
姉さんは心にいろいろ溜め込めて。
Someone knows the truth.
たまには自分に優しくしてあげて。
うん、ありがとうね。
Suddenly, they both felt someone's presence and whirled around. Oh, hello. A middle-aged man stood there. It was Genji, the head servant.
そこで何をしている？シャノン、早く厨房に戻りなさい。
あ、はい、失礼いたしました。
Shannon humbly obeyed and promptly made to push the cart and leave. However, Cannon appealed to Genji in silence, bearing something in his eyes that he could not express in words.
どうした？何かあったか？
シャノンは何も悪くないのに、あいつだ。
やめてカノン君。失礼しました。すぐに仕事に戻ります。カノン君も自分の持ち場に戻る。お願い。
姉さんがそう言うなら。
何事もないならそうしなさい。
はい。失礼します。
I didn't think he'd have anything to say about it. From the shadows in the hallway, an old woman wearing an apron watched over them. It was Kumasawa.
おいたわしや。シャノン、あの二人がいじめられる理由は何もないのです。しかし、ゴーダさんに嫌われているのは紛れもない。
Why does Goda dislike
ゴ
them?
ーダさんは後ろ宮本家へいらっしゃられるまで、そこで身につけられたというお仕事ぶりは、そりゃ大したものだとは思います。ただ、ゴーダさんはここでは最も年季、ご自身のそれまでの積み重ねによるプライドもあられたのでしょう。彼は 自分より長い年季を持ちながらも未熟で人生経験も及ばないシャノンさんとカノン君をことあるごとにいびられるのです。また気の毒なことに夏日奥様にも嫌われております。もちろん年季という意味では奥様の方が長くこの家におられます。ただこればかりは奥様にも同情しなくてはなりません。本当に親方様も罪作りな方でございます。ご自身のちょっとした気まぐれが奥様にこれほどまでの劣等感をお与えになるとはどうして思い至らなかったのでしょう。もちろん奥様とて内心はあの二人に辛く当たる言われは何もないことを重々承知してはおります。しかしそれが理屈で分かっているからといってどうにもならないのが人の心。
Thank you for the info dump, Kumasawa.
ああ、ほいたわしや。私には何もできずこうして物陰から見守ることしかできない。
It's like Kumasawa like pulled us to the side and just like explained to us the whole situation. Jesus. Okay. 45 minutes later, noontime. The four of us cousins were enjoying our stories, just shooting the breeze. Anyway, there were both girls and guys here. Plus, we had people over a wide spread of ages, adult, high school, and elementary school. Even if we just talked about our own lives, the other three kept listening attentively.
なんかやっと馴染んできたぜ。ジェシカもマリアも6年前からは想像もつかないくらい成長しちまったからよ。正直なところ少しだけ違和感を持ってたんだが、こうして話をしているうちに中身はあの頃から何も変わってないことが分かったぜ。
同じ言葉を返してやるよ。バトラだって6年ぶりだってのに全然変わってねえぜ。図体がいくらでかくなっても中身は相変わらずお子様だってことだな。
Just need to fill in that 6-year gap, everything gets back to normal. You guys were already used to being family.
マリアだっていつまでもお子様じゃねえぞ。お子様から可愛いお姫様に成長していくんだからな。
Oh god. I think I remember what lines are coming. Jesus.
まな板みてえな胸もすぐジェシカ並みになるぞ。そしたら
Chill, Battler. Just relax. Yeah. Oh god. Maria, stop.
ダメだよマリアちゃん。そんな約束しちゃダメ。
God damn it, Battler.
約束したから揉ませる。マリア、約束を守る。絶対守る。
Maria's a woman of her word. It's already a done deal.
お前本当に素直ないい子だな。お前と結婚する未来の旦那さんはきっと幸せ者だぜ。
っていい話にすり替えつつ約束を保持してんじゃねえぜマリア。その約束はなしなし。
約束取り消し。
She has no idea what we're talking about. She just heard promise and said, yeah.
この6年はやっぱり寂しかったよ。
そうだな。こういうふざけた話にはならなかったな。でも建設的な話はできてたと思ったぜ。将来に対する心構えとか受験とか就職とかよ。
悪うございましたね。俺が来たらおまぬけなドタバタばっかりでよ。
でもマリアは今年のが楽しい。
そうだね。僕も同感。今年が一番楽しいよ。
Maria's sincere words probably spoke for everyone present. George Aniki stroked Maria's head, and she giggled like a happy kitten. A timid knocking sound and the equally timid voice of a young woman came through the door. Jessica answered brightly. So how young was Shannon when she started working as a servant here? Jessica stood up from the bed and opened the door. There stood a servant girl who must have been about our age. Trembling a little as she noticed me, she bowed deeply. Oh my god.
シャノンちゃんにも驚かされたぜ。あんたもすっかり美人になったじゃねえのよ。
もったいないお言葉、強烈に存じます。
He took that compliment better than the one from the adults at the dinner table about how she looks now.
しかしよ、この島じゃよっぽど食事の栄養価が高いんじゃねえのか。何を食ってどこを鍛えたらそんなにでっかいお胸になるんだか。
God damn it, Battler, every fucking time. Oh, he's got a Sprite just for fondling. He's got a fondle, like, fucking... God damn it. I did not remember that he actually had a Sprite for when he goes into, like, creeper mode. Wow. With both hands poised and saliva dribbling from my mouth, I closed in. For the sake of justice and my personal honor, I'd like to point out that I don't suffer from some strange disease that makes my lymph nodes itch unless I scratch my neck open, and which can only be prevented by fondling breasts. This is just a Battler-style method of communication. Well, yeah, I mean, you've made that clear. This is the third girl since we've begun. If I slowly close in on her like this, odds are 8 or 9 out of 10 that I get slapped or clobbered, right? So I can use this Battler-sama original technique to spark a gag like that and break the ice. Well, it also means I really do get to touch them that 1 in 10 chance though, right? Yeah, like that ever happened, yeah. At that point, my hands were less than a centimeter away from Shannon-chan's boobs. But the counter-strike had yet to come. Oh my god. That's, Is that obedience to the family? No talk back, no denying requests? No, that's kind of extreme. She blushed and lowered her head in embarrassment when she realized what was going on, but she just stood there with both hands politely joined in front of her, not even trying to resist or cover her breasts. Hey, I wasn't planning on this. Please hit me right now, or I'm seriously gonna... I would assume George or Jessica... Okay, yeah. Which is why I was glad that Jessica chose that time to drive her elbow into the back of my head. Oh my god, you saved him. Jeez, man. This is a hell of a way to break the ice, Battler. Yeah, you're part of the family.
お客様でも犯罪は犯罪。女の子の胸はだいたい10センチくらいからが防空識別圏だ
Air
な。
defense identification
2
range.
センチ圏まで侵入してきたら、これはもう領空侵犯だぜ。スクランブル発進で即ビンタを食らわせてやれ。
そんなことできません。
Yeah, I don't think someone as timid as her is about ready to slap someone.
家具ですし。
Oh, what? Wait. That's what Kenan said too, right? Who was the one teaching, like, using those kinds of terms? Like, is it Grandpa? Is it Genji? Is it Natsuhi? Is it... I can't remember oldest son's name. Natsuhi's husband's name. Just because we haven't come by him yet since we restarted. Of course, she didn't want her breasts touched, but if a guest so desired, she was prepared to sacrifice herself to suit their wants. Ugh. A girl like this needs some urgent protection.
今時こんな献身美徳な子がいるとは軽いめまいすら覚えるぜ。でもダメだ、ダメなんだ。俺がいやらしい顔で迫る。ハタウス。いやエッチ。
Let's do some training, Shannon.
約束じゃないとオチがつかねえんだよ。頼むよ、お願いだよ。俺を引っこうバッバチンと。
Please hit me.
お願いは聞けません。家具ですから。
Yeah.
でも命令ならお聞きします。それが務めですから。
じゃあ命令させてもらうことにするよ。次からバトラ君が胸に触ろうとしてきたら平手打ちで反撃すること。いいね。
はい。
She looks like she's ready to have fun with this. She's like, oh, okay, sure.
そのようにさせていただきます。バトラ様、ご承知おきくださいませ。
Shannon Chan announced this with bowing, while bowing elegantly to me. Her expression was radiant. I gave her a thumbs up to show her I was fine with that.
6年前はお手伝いさんの連れ子がついでにお手伝いみたいな印象だったんだけど、すっかり一人前の使用人さんだな。今年で何年になるんだ？
はい、おかげさまで10年ほどお使いさせていただいております。
10 years. So she started here when she was 8? The kanji for her name, I read as Shannon. Now here's another name that's far from typical for a Japanese person. Back in the day, I was a kid myself, so I accepted her name without paying much attention to it. Thinking about it now, though, her name's pretty unusual, even though she's not a member of the Ushiromiya family. Maybe it's like a servant's professional name or something. If so, that might explain why her name's so similar to Kanen-kun, that kid I met earlier in the Rose Garden. She's a long-term servant who served here since she was 6 years old. 16. Okay. Her appearance had changed so much that I couldn't match her to the person of my memories, but we both knew each other 6 years ago. That shy part of her had always been there, but she did seem to have developed the allure you'd expect of a girl her age, especially in her breasts. Yes. Thank you, Battler. That kid we met... Oh, why am I reading George's line?
弟というわけでは。でも、私のことを姉と慕ってくれます。何か失礼なことはしませんでしたか？
He did seem to care about you a lot.
相変わらずいつも通りだぜ。もうちょっと愛想よくすればいいのによ。もったいない。カノン君がご迷惑をおかけした。
It's got a flaw or two. This is kind of a weird angle background CG to have sprites on top of, because it's like you're looking down on a bed real close. So it's kind of a... Yeah, it's just a... Doesn't quite look right to have sprites on top of this background CG.
別に迷惑なんか何も。同じ男としてわかるさ。ありゃ気難しい年頃だ。愛想が悪いのは当たり前だぜ。
マリアもよく言われる。愛想悪いって言われる。カナンと一緒。
Well, you warmed up to your family really fast, but maybe that's just because they're family. You definitely haven't seemed unsociable, but this might be a special circumstance.
マリア様は愛想悪くなんかありません。おお、一緒が良かった。
Or she was just parroting what she heard.
食事の準備ができたんだっけ？
はい、失礼いたしました。お食事のご用意が整いましたので、皆様をお屋敷へご案内いたします。
Shannon bowed again formally and returned to her duty mode. We realized that if we made her stick around for any more light conversation, it would actually make it harder for her to do her job. We got up off our butts to avoid interfering with her work any further.
じゃあ、お屋敷に行こうか。みんなもお腹が空いてたところでしょ。
だな。ゴーダさんがいる時の飯は楽しみなんだよ。あの人、どこぞの有名ホテルでシェフをやってたらしくて、かなり料理の腕があるんだぜ。
Super good at cooking, but can't prepare the goddamn tea in time.
ほうほう、それ楽しみ。行こうぜマリア。ガツガツ犬みたいに蹴散らかすぞ。
犬みたいに食い散らかす。
ダメダメ。バトラ君の言うことはいちいち真に受けちゃダメだよ。
It's too late.
全部冗談なんだから。さあ、行こう行こう。
She's just full-on Battler's best friend now. Under Shannon-chan's guidance, we headed towards the mansion. Met once again by the magnificent rose garden, we continued onward as the intimidating mansion of the Ushiromiya family came into view. It had apparently been built shortly after the war, so you could feel the dignity of almost half a century hanging about it. The building was gorgeous on the surface, but old as it was, equipment such as the AC and heating were apparently quite frail. According to Jessica, midwinter was especially tough, what with all the drafts. Haven't these people ever heard of a kotatsu? This kotatsu, it's just... it's not fancy enough. It's unrefined. As we entered the entrance hall, an aged servant greeted us. Hello, Genji. Now him I remembered. Genji-san, who had been working here longer than anyone, filled the role of head servant. Now how are we with filling out... I haven't talked about this yet, this thing. But I did have it filled out when I... did I have this one filled out? Thought I had it filled out. But maybe I was missing one. I can't remember who went here. I have all the servants. Just missing Jessica's parents. Natsuhi would go here. And Grandpa goes here. Don't remember who went here. Is it maybe the doctor? Oh, it must be Grandpa's doctor. It's gotta be. Okay. I would assume that must be who it was. But other than that, you know, I know there's more characters in this game, so I'm curious if we're going to get, like, another chart or something. Like, will the other characters be displayed in some sort of, like, tree or chart? Because I know there's more than this. It's just from seeing characters. Not from knowing anything about them or who they are, but... Like, where would even, like... Beatrice go? Or they just don't put the non-family, non-servants on the chart. I don't know. We'll see. Yes, it has. As our eyes met, he greeted me with a calm, composed voice. His bow wasn't as graceful or refined as Goda's, but despite its simplicity, it communicated his feelings very well. Unlike your grandfather, Shannon-chan bowed deeply and watched us leave. After that, we headed towards the dining room under Genji-san's guidance. Genji-san, just like Kumasawa-san, stood in stark contrast to us young people who had grown beyond recognition over the last 6 years. His appearance was exactly the same as in my memories from 6 years ago. It was as though time had stopped since the last time we met. Genji-san was an extremely quiet and diligent person. He was basically grandfather's close aide or caregiver, and you might even call him grandfather's companion of many years. In fact, it seems he was by grandfather's side even more often than my late grandmother was. According to Jessica, grandfather trusted him more than any of his blood relatives. But I wonder how long he's served. I never got the details, but I heard something about him being here since the very beginning, when this mansion was first constructed. Which would mean that he has dedicated half of his life to serving here. It's easy to see why he's so trusted. Jeez. As we passed through the massive hall that extended up to the second story of the mansion with no separating floor, I spotted something that hadn't existed in my memory of the 6 years ago. This is the painting, right, I think? The Beatrice painting. Oh yeah. That is a slow crawl. There it is. Yet to ever meet her. It was an awfully big portrait hanging right in front of the stairs that rose to the second floor. Exactly how many pictures of Beatrice does he have? Like, he has one big one here. I know he has one smaller one in his room. Does every room in this, like, mansion include a nice painting of her? Is he just, like, that obsessed? It was, let's see. Without thinking, I stopped walking, captivated by it. Since I'd stopped so fast, Maria, who was following behind me, ran into my back. I pointed at the big, prominently displayed portrait in the hall. Everyone else stopped too. Don't remember what everyone else thinks about it.
確か僕の記憶が正しければ一昨年あたりだったと思うよ。
さようでございます。一昨年の4月に
So we weren't just hanging it, we made them. Is it while his whatever obsession he has grew larger now that he's starting to lose it? The portrait suited this western mansion, and that woman in the elegant dress gave off a sense of refinement. I couldn't have guessed her age, but her sharp eyes and the strong will she seemed to possess made her look youthful. She seemed somehow different from the composed, middle-aged woman you often see in famous pictures. If she'd had normal black hair, I might have assumed it was a portrait of my long-deceased grandmother in her prime. However, she had beautiful blonde hair, and didn't look Japanese at all. Maria answered that simple question enthusiastically, as though proud she knew the answer. Beatrice. Was it Beatrice? Che, not chi. I just have the Beatrice, Beatrice, stuck in. So it was chi and not chang. Oh yeah, it was an old tale that everyone... I think I already said this, but Rokkenjima is a small island, only 10 kilometers in circumference. However, that's actually pretty massive, considering that only the Ushiromiya family lives here. So only the harbor and the area around the mansion were set up to be lived in. Beyond that, the island remained as untouched as when it was uninhabited. The vast and empty forest had absolutely no lights, phones, or people passing through. To understand how dangerous that is, you need to forget your common sense as a city dweller. After all, if you happen to fall down a hole in the depths of the forest and sprain your ankle, no one would come save you, no matter how much you cried or screamed. Then, once the sun went down, the forest would be wrapped in complete darkness, since there were no streetlights. And since there were no signs, it'd be easier to get lost and confused, losing your sense of direction inside that dark forest. Nowadays, most people see a forest as a peaceful place, but to the people of bygone eras, before the light of civilization drove out the night, forests were as geographically separated from civilization as the sea. There were oceans above the ground. Fishermen who go out into the ocean are putting their lives at risk, despite their technical knowledge. In the same way, hunters who go out in the forest are in danger, despite having specialized knowledge of their own. Yeah. If children were to go play in such a dangerous forest, something terrible might happen. Hence, we need a story to keep them out. Someone's parents might have thought so. Maybe grandmother first said it, or maybe it was grandfather himself. Or perhaps the story has been passed down in the silence since ancient times. Well, no, there's at least some kind of truth to the story, I assume. There's a terrible witch in the forest, so you must not go in. At some point, this ghost story of Rokkenjima was born. This is the legend of Rokkenjima's witch. That's why, when we talk about a witch on this island, we're referring to the master of the vast and savage forest. Come to think of it, when I stayed at this mansion as a little kid, during those eerie nights when the wind and rain pounded on the windows, I remember being terrified by a story of the forest witch who roamed around searching for human sacrifices. So, Beatrice, huh? When Aniki mentioned it, I searched my memory and was sure I recalled hearing a name like that when I was little. Beatrice. Doubt he would do that 1 or 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Yeah, he's currently dealing with an obsession and having these paintings made. Although,
現実と幻想の区別がつかなくなり始めた。
I don't think they're delusions. An obsession, yeah. Delusions, no.
私たちにとっては想像の中の魔女に過ぎないけど、ジウ様にとっては彼女はこの島にいる存在。いる。だからそれを理解することができない私たちにもわかるようあの絵を描かせたって言うんだけど。
Incapable of understanding unless you have a picture? Or is it more than just a picture? I mean, yeah. I'm sure it is creepy. Ooh. Don't disrespect the master of the household. Oh, just don't say things in front of him. Well, how often does he even come out? When do they even see him? Jessica glanced at the portrait with an irritated gaze before turning away. Only a small portion of this island was controlled by the Ushiromiya family. All of the lawless remainder was the domain of the witch, Beatrice. You might even call her the true ruler of Rokkenjima. I felt a faint revival of that unsettling sense of misfortune, which I'd felt when I learned of the tutelary god's shrine being struck by the lightning. Yeah, about that too. No seagulls. Shrine struck. Paintings made. Grandfather insane. There's a lot of things that I assume are connected in some way or another. And I remembered that Kumasawa-san tried to tell an ominous story about Rokkenjima before Jessica stopped her. That too. I don't know what she was planning to tell us about this island, but I do know one thing. It isn't the Ushiromiya family that rules Rokkenjima. It's the witch, Beatrice. Do you believe in her then, Battler? If you're saying that? That's right. After all, this is the witch's island. So you believe in the stories still? That you were told as a kid? He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would just instantly believe in that sort of thing, but... Well, Or like, not instantly, but still believe in that sort of thing after growing up. But... could be wrong. When I looked around, everyone was already heading towards the dining room. I hurriedly chased after them. We walked up to the huge double doors that led to the dining room. Genji-san knocked. The doors were opened and we were invited inside. Hello, everyone. The dining room, which looked exactly like you'd imagine a rich person's dining room to be, had a super long table that was obviously positioned with no purpose other than to make the guests conscious of their rank. Our parents were already sitting in accordance with that ordering. Brats. The old bastard pressed us to sit. The only gaps in that group of people were the spots we were supposed to sit, which only made us feel our tardiness all the more. The seat at the head of the table, called the incipient's chair, was for the most highly ranked, reserved for grandfather. It was still empty, and it's going to remain empty if I remember correctly. At least this meal, he probably wanted to show up last for dramatic effect. From the perspective of someone facing the incipient's chair head-on, the seating order went from left to right, with the lower-ranking seats progressing in rows of two further away from it. So the left-hand side of the first row, closest to the incipient's chair, was where Uncle Kraus should have sat, since he was the second highest in rank. Uncle Kraus, that's his name. Okay. Forgot about it. It looked like he hadn't arrived yet, so that seat was empty. Across from his chair, on the right side of the first row, sat the eldest daughter of the family, Aunt Eva, who was the third highest rank. Then left-hand side of the second row was for the fourth highest in rank. There sat my damned dad, the old bastard Rudolph, the third of the siblings. Across from him, on the right side of the second row, sat Aunt Rosa, the youngest sibling. At this point, you might expect their husbands and wives to come next. But no, family comes first, that's right. Children in the family rank higher than spouses do. But nope, the left-hand seat in the third row, rank number 6, belonged to Jessica. Opposite her was George Anarchy. I sat next to Jessica. And Maria sat across from me. Then finally next to me on the left-hand side of the fifth row. Okay, yeah, this was strange to me. This was so strange. Like, it seems like Aunt Natsuhi runs so much in this house and does a lot for the family. But she's 10th in rank, like, ranked below, like, Marie. Ranking below Maria in, like, a in-charge sort of sense. I mean, I kind of get it, but it seems like Natsuhi runs so much, so it's just strange to me. 10th highest in rank. Opposite her was Uncle Hideyoshi. Next to Aunt Natsuhi in the 6th row in the final seat on the left-hand side sat Kairi-san. The seat opposite to Kairi-san was empty, even though silverware had been set there and everything. According to this ranking system, that spot was where Aunt Rosa's husband should be sitting. And they set it, huh? They set the table where he would have gone. Why? Even though he wasn't supposed to be coming, his place was made up. Oh, So what is going on with Aunt Rosa's husband? Normally, ranking systems of this sort give spouses equal positions as their partners, but the Ushiromiya family's system was unique. Maybe it's a remnant of male chauvinism. If you start with the assumption that the woman's womb is just something to be borrowed, then the children of direct descent would come first, directly followed by grandchildren. In other words, spouses had no blood ties and are therefore placed at the end of the line. It's terrible, but by this system my grandmother would be ranked even lower than me, if she were still alive. In their youth, they obey their father. After they get married, their husband. After aging, their children. There's an old saying, women have no home in any realm. It's quite the way to do it for a family. I'll definitely say that. Long ago, when I was still incapable of figuring all this out, I thought it was so great that we could all chat in our little groups. Adult siblings with adult siblings and cousins with cousins. However, now that I can re-examine the seating order after growing up a bit, it stirs up some very complicated feelings in me. Yeah. Aunt Natsuhi was married to the eldest son and was de facto number 2 in managing this family, sat to my right. Okay, yeah, exactly what I was saying. Like, it's gotta be tough for Natsuhi, which meant that she was 2 steps lower than me in the ranking order. It was hard to imagine what might be going on inside her heart. I can't imagine. That's why I made a small apologetic gesture to her before sitting down.
お久しぶりですね、バトラ君。ずいぶん背が伸びましたね。
ああ、はい。食ったり食べたり食事したりしてたら、いつの間にかこんな身長に。
That's one way to put it. Sustenance from Mother Earth's bountiful gifts. Really?
さすが男の子ね。身長はいくつくらいあるの？
180かな。 つうかおばさん、そこは食べてばっかりじゃねえかって突っ込んでくださいよ。
ああごめんなさいね。
After a short pause, she did laugh with me, but it seemed she couldn't quite figure out what she was supposed to be laughing at. This woman is Aunt Natsuhi. She's the wife of the eldest son of the family, meaning she's my father's older brother's wife. It is simpler. Is it simpler if I just call her Jessica's mother? It feels bad to say it like this, but while I didn't exactly dislike her, I didn't particularly like her either. She hardly ever spoke with us kids, and all my memories of her involve her talking to the adults about complicated things with a scary look on her face. Yeah. In fact, since we hardly ever exchanged words, I spent a long time trying to figure out how I should approach her, though my efforts seemed to have ended in failure. The silverware sat neatly on the table, but the meal itself hadn't been brought in yet. As a general rule, you couldn't start a meal until the person sitting at the head of the table arrived. Yeah, you're gonna have to forego that rule this time around. So long as grandfather didn't come, lunch would be put on hold indefinitely. Not even the appetizers would arrive. Simply put, the silence in this room was caused by our parents enduring their hunger while they waited for grandfather to arrive.